evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Evermore, your Newcastle United podcast, live exclusively on the Slide Roll Pass YouTube channel. As you can see, I'm Chris, and I've been joined by the usual wing backs, as James Lynch and Dan Wales. And just like Newcastle, we've gone Dutch to complete our back four. But unlike the club, he actually decided to join us tonight. We've got the Oracle of Welsh football, that is Di Rees. How are you, boys?
Good, mate. How are you?
Tell you what, Chris,
very well.
That was well worth the wait.
It was,
mate.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, mate. 10 out of 10.
I feel like I've planned that better than the Newcastle United transfers, to be pretty honest with you.
You've peaked far too early, mate. Far too early.
and now here comes Ben Mee. I'm only joking. No, I'm not desperate. I'm not desperate, lads. So, we're not having five at the back. No Steve Bruce shit going on here tonight. I'll tell you what, boys. But yeah, so it's been another quiet week, obviously, in the world of Newcastle United, as we're all aware, guys. So we're going to get stuck into some categories in a minute. But in case you didn't know, we're live on YouTube tonight. Please feel free to join us in the comments below. We love having a bit crack with anybody. Join and let us know what you think about the topics we're going to discuss. Certainly on the first topic, I think we're going to have a hell of a lot to say, because the first topic is the Saturday and the Cup disaster, and then we're going to have one eye on Watford as well. So Saturday was really shit, suffice to say, and I'm looking for some positivity. So I'm going to the most positive man in this back four, that is you, Dan Wales. Can you share any positivity on this, mate?
No.
We're done. Dan has had enough.
Short answer. Even that managed to zap the positivity and optimism that I normally have from me. God, it was awful, wasn't it? I mean, I wasn't actually at the game. I was at Gateshead, but I was following it whilst I was sat there, and I watched the highlights, obviously. And I mean, yes, we had a lot of chances, and to be fair, if we had a proper striker, we probably would have won that game. But we didn't. And it's embarrassing, it's pitiful, and to make even worse, all the Cambridge lot celebrated by going Sue at the end, and I wanted to just cry into a pillow. But yeah,
they went to talk to some middle class lady called Sue, because they're all posh, aren't they, from Cambridge? Possibly was that mate, really. I might got a bit confused there.
It was just awful, wasn't it? As I say, you're losing to a League One side at home when you're playing pretty much your full strength 11 available at the time. It really is embarrassing. Not the best of introductions for Kieran Trippier, even though, from what I'm told, he had an all right game. I heard Joe Linton was okay as well, but apart from that, pretty awful. I don't know. I mean, obviously, James, you were there. Any other comments on how good or bad players were?
Well, look, I was there, as you say, and this is easily one of the worst games I've been to in recent memory. I remember the Burnley League Cup defeat a few months ago. That was bad, but this was like on another level, and it was absolutely shocking. The players turned up just expecting to win the game, and they were completely embarrassed. I didn't sit in my usual seats for this game, and I was actually right behind the goal in the Leazes end, so I had a really good view of their goal, and it was just a total comedy of errors at the back. I mean, I don't know what the Dubravka was playing at. He's got to do better with that, and we have talked about Dubravka on the show before, and I just don't think he's good enough anymore. And then, he feigns injury for what felt like the rest of the game after the goal, and when you knew there was an out wrong with him, I just think he was just so embarrassed about his mistake. But look, besides that, it was, as you rightly say, Dan, it was great to see Trippier make his debut. I thought he looked really good for the first 20 minutes or so. He linked up really well with Fraser on that right-hand side, but then he kind of faded away after that, much like the rest of the team. And this has been talked a lot about since Saturday, but that game just showed how desperate we are to bring in another striker with Wilson out for the foreseeable future. And of course, we all know Chris Wood hopefully is going to come in and fill that void. We'll talk about him a bit later. But yeah, we desperately need a goal scorer at the moment.
I know.
Go on, Dan.
I know I might be an unlikely candidate to bring some positivity here, but I actually, obviously, not positive about the result and the performance, but I think there's two important things to take from the game, which are genuinely true. One is, okay, we didn't have the striker, but maybe by the end of this week we will. And if, as Dan says, we created the chances that we did, and we do have a centre forward play, and then I do think we win that game. And I do think, as a consequence of that, once you miss a couple of those chances, the ball doesn't go in, we have a couple of goals disallowed, whatever. I do think you get to the point where the players, I certainly felt it watching the match, this is just not our day today. It's just one of those days. And I appreciate we've had a lot of one of those days, but there was a lot of possession. There was a lot of chances created, especially in the first half. I'm not saying, panic over, lads, but I do think that there are enough positives to take, in the sense that we also don't have any more cup games to play. We've got our one crap game out of the way where we've not played for a fortnight. Trippier's got some game time. Were we going to win the cup anyway this year? Absolutely not. The focus needs to be on staying up. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a good game. It wasn't a good performance. It wasn't a good result. But in the bigger picture, I do think it's worth pointing out that I think that moving ahead, this actually may have a positive outcome for us. And as Mark has said in the comments there, the keeper did have a fantastic game. He made 2 or 3 fantastic saves, which again, on another day makes a big, big difference. So, I'm not getting the party poppers out just yet, but I do think there is there are some slivers of hope to hold on to.
Just one thing I will add to that. Sorry, Chris, just quickly. I appreciate all of that, Di, and I agree with all that. But I think one of the biggest negatives to come out from that is how will that affect potential signings this window? I mean, are the players looking at that game and thinking, my word, they are miles away from where they are wanting to be? And I'm not saying it will have a decision, but it won't have helped at all that in bringing new players in. I mean, I'm talking about top class players, that is.
Can I just add a flip side to that, though? I also think that there's an argument. Again, if I'm, let's say, Aaron Ramsey, one can only dream.
I wonder why you picked him.
Weird,
straight on that name of Welsh players.
Exactly. It's the first name. In fact, with my Welsh hat on,
well, in that case, the England hat's coming on then.
Oh no! It's like having Ralph Hasenhüttl on this. I'm going to get to him in a minute as well. Don't worry about that. So,
what I will say is that if I'm one of these players, Aaron Ramsey as an example, footballers have got big egos, and I do think there's an element of we can sell the club to a lot of people in saying, look, mate, you come here, you're going to be our hero, you're going to be the one that gets us out of this. And if you've ever been to St. James's Park when it's on one and you're the person that you've got, 50,000 people chanting your name, whatever, I do think, yes, it was a crap result, but I do think the flip side to that is we can almost use it in a bizarre way to be, say to someone, you be the one, you be the one that turns this around. I'm being mindlessly optimistic, I suppose, but I do think there is to it as well.
No, I think it's a fair shout, to be honest. I mean, those players that we're talking about as well, obviously Trippier, we'll get on to Wood, Ramsey's another. They've all seen what St. James's Park is like when it's rocking. They know that atmosphere and what it can be like and what that club can be like. A lot of those guys would have grew up when Newcastle were decent, and saw us, kind of pushing for Champions League places and stuff like that. So yeah, the guys will know that. But I mean, it's funny because I see both sides of that. I see James's point as well. When you're trying to sell it to the likes of a Botman and guys like that who maybe don't know as much as maybe the British-based players would have done, or guys who have been here for a long time, they're only seeing the headlines, aren't they? Of little old Cambridge beat Newcastle, and the mainstream media doesn't need any more material to piss all over Newcastle, but sadly the lads give it to them on Saturday, and it was really disappointing. I think the biggest worry for me, and hopefully this is rectified now, as we're going to come on to Wood in a bit. It was dreadful just watching the nobody in the width of the posts, and the box was horrific. I mean, if that was a Sunday league game, you would have changed things. But the bit that really worried me a bit, I don't want to be too harsh on Eddie Howe, but I think, why didn't he have a young striker on the bench? Dan, just bringing you on this, mate. Why didn't he have Dylan Stevenson on the bench? Just give him a little bit of game time. What harm would that have done?
I suppose you're right. I mean, obviously, it having a striker is better than not having a striker, especially when we're creating chances, but then I've got no one for them to fall to. But you'd imagine Eddie Howe's thinking was, look, we've got enough attacking talent on the pitch. I know none of them are, actual strikers, so to speak, but to win the match. And to be fair, we did hit the post and the bar in that game as well. So, if one of those goes 2 inches the other way, then it's a goal, and we score and probably go and win the match. I think if Newcastle take the lead in that match, they do go on and win it quite comfortably. But yeah, I suppose if you're going to be promoting youth, it is good to try and give them a chance, especially in games like that. Obviously, yes, you've started with your best 11 to try and win the game, but I suppose if you are in a situation where there is a chance where you can blood a new lad in, fair enough, take it. Because I suppose last year we saw Elliot Anderson come on for his first appearance against Arsenal in the Cup, and obviously I know he's not had much of a chance since, but at least he's got those minutes and he knows what it's like. There's reports of him going on loan today. Whether that
I heard that.
Yeah.
Is it Luton Town? Is
I
it?
think
Is it
so.
Luton
Which, to be
Town?
fair, could be really good for him. I don't see why that's about. I think that could be really good because he needs to be perhaps playing at more men's football level as opposed to reserve under 21 level now that the age he's coming into.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Dylan Stevenson, I suppose obviously the manager probably will have looked at him and assessed to decide whether he thinks he's good enough, and obviously he decided not at that moment. So that's down to Eddie Howe, but I can fully appreciate your point, Chris. Yes.
Is that a big worry as well that the young guys just aren't good enough, Di? I know he gave David Brooks a chance, didn't he, at Bournemouth? I think. Did he come through the youth academy? Did he buy David Brooks? I'm not sure.
Brooks came from Sheffield United.
Right.
No, he came from somewhere else. He'd gone from Sheffield United. I can't remember where he exactly came from, but the point I was going to make, I agree with you. There's definitely an issue there, and I think we're going to mention the Longstaffs in a minute. There's definitely an issue in relating to either there's not enough talent coming through, or we're not giving them a chance. And I don't know where particularly we end up falling on that line. I think that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
I will just add one more brief thing quick. If we're going to have a go at Eddie Howe for something, and I don't want to be too critical of him at this stage, maybe having a go is strong, but I think if I want to be critical of Eddie Howe's decisions, I don't think it's that bad a decision that we didn't play a striker in the end, because I thought Saint-Maximin was so good against Man United. I thought maybe Howe has, worked out a way where he can play through the middle and it works, and rotating him from side to side, perhaps that's the best way to do it. Obviously, he got that wrong, and that's fair, because I think I would have done the same as Eddie Howe. I think if we're going to have a stick, if you like, to beat Eddie Howe with, I really do think we need to look at the defence. And I know we've played a lot of good teams recently, but I think he's managed 9 games now. He's kept 1 clean sheet. We've conceded a lot of goals in that time. And I do think looking at the way we defended on the weekend is a real worry for me going forward, because they caused us a lot of issues. We played a very high line. We were very open at times, especially at the back. And I do think if we're going to question Eddie Howe, then I think it needs to be, he may well have moved us forward in terms of how we use the ball and got the best out of 1 or 2 players, but defensively, we're the same as we were under Bruce, arguably worse. So I do think that we need to be realistic about that as well.
That's a good point. We missed a trick, James, do you think, maybe with a defensive coach or something? I know was it John Terry went back to Chelsea? Obviously, that was always going to happen. But, looking at Eddie Howe's coaching setup, obviously he's got Jason Tinder. They appear to be like Ant and Dec, the two of them. They don't ever just stand on the sideline one at a time, do they? They have to be together and holding hands and shouting in unison. But should we have got a defensive coach, do you think, mate? Because as Di rightly says there, we're great moving the ball and pushing on a little bit now, but at the back we're as open as Sharon Stone's legs, even against a League One side, which is really, really worrying. So I thought I would have got Dan with that one. Not you, Di.
I don't know what to say now. You just completely lost my train of thought.
Sorry,
oh my days!
The first thing that I could think of. So. Yeah. Brilliant, it's my basic instinct, lads. That's what it is.
Well, look, the simple answer to that is obviously yes. But there's so much we need to do with this football club right now. I mean, I'm talking. I can probably think about 10 different positions in the backroom staff that we probably need to strengthen on as it is. And I was talking about this on last week's show. I mean, yeah, you can have the best defense in the league, but right now with Wilson out, we don't know what's happening with Wood. Potentially, we'll come on to him later. If you're not going to score goals, you're not going to win games. It's as simple as that. Trippier is a very, very good start. We all know that. But we need a brand new back four. And hopefully Botman will be coming in soon. We don't know about that one in terms of the bid. And again, we'll come on to talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I mean, Eddie Howe maybe has bitten off a little bit more than he can chew. And I think he's probably looking at this now and thinking, wow, I've got a lot of work to do with this team. Really a hell of a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's possibly right. It's possibly right. But so I think, moving on from the Cambridge disaster, we've got one eye on Watford at the weekend. Going back to you on this one, Di, obviously, hopefully Wood will be able to play. I know there was words that he was injured as well, but hopefully he'll be able to be fit, fit and play. A lot of people are saying Watford or bust. What's your take on it, mate?
I mean, I think that's a little bit simplistic, but I do think it's not far off the truth, mainly because I don't think the one game in itself decides our season, but I do think we're very much at the point there. If we can't beat Watford, who are we going to beat? In our last set of games, we've had one good performance against Man United and have been shite really before, up until that. And looking at Watford, they concede a lot of goals, but they do score as well. There's very, very rarely they don't score in a game. So I do think we are going to have to be tight at the back. I do also think we're going to have to score 2 goals to win the game. I think 1 goal isn't going to be enough. So I think it's going to be a really, really tricky game, but I'm very much of the opinion, barring something miraculous in terms of the players coming in and the rest of the window, I'm very much of the opinion if we don't win this game, I think we might be done for, purely on the basis that I don't know who else we're going to beat.
I think with you, James, that kind of dovetails as well into your point as well, that if we're struggling to get those players in because of maybe the Cambridge game and the kind of vibe in the media, if we don't get those players in and we'll go into Watford even just with Chris Wood and Kieran Trippier, is that enough, mate? Do you think we'll be able to get the result with the players we've got?
Look, I'm getting sick of saying this now, and I say this every week, but this is a massive game. Every game we play right now just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I disagree slightly with Di in that I genuinely do think this is a relegation shootout. If you look at it, Norwich and Burnley, I think they're pretty much nailed to go down. So that 3rd spot is realistically between us and Watford. I think Leeds and Everton are fine. And I think Everton are signing players this window. I think Leeds with Bamford coming back. So I think you could probably rule them out. So I think it is between us and Watford. But massive game. Hopefully Wood will start. As you mentioned before, there were reports he picked up an injury against Huddersfield at the weekend. Hence he was taken off at half time. I'm certain the club wouldn't be signing him if he wasn't available for Watford. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully he can hit the ground running. They're a tricky team, Watford, though. As Di rightly said, they've got 2 very good strikers in Josh King and Emmanuel Dennis. And so we're going to have to be wary of those 2. They will definitely score. I'm certain of that. So yeah, I agree. Like Di, we're going to have to score 2. I think they've got 13 league goals between them this season, Dennis and King. Which is really good going for a team at the bottom, and really tough one to call this. I'm going to sit on the fence. I think it's going to be a draw.
What about you, Dan? We've got Ismail Assar as well, haven't we? He's still in there, isn't he? He's a danger, isn't he? So,
yeah, I mean, the one positive I take is that under Steve Bruce at the start of the season, we absolutely battered them at Vicarage Road. But
we still drew, though.
We still drew, yes, and we still conceded that game. But again, it was a case of not having a striker to take all the chances we had. It's
Look how far we've come. Nearly exactly the same position.
It is the same problems, but as I say, you look in that game and you think that is a game where we should be winning. That amount of chances we missed. Again, it's a bit like the Cambridge game we've just seen, but that's the one thing that gives me a bit of positivity. I feel like they are beatable. Watford, I say that with the fact that we've only beaten one team this season. But
I love how we can say they're beatable and we can't beat anybody. But I love the positivity, mate. I really do.
I'm trying just for you, Chris. Right?
You are. I appreciate it. I do appreciate the efforts.
But I just think we've got to have a little bit of positivity and at least try to think that we can get out of this. Otherwise, then what's the point?
And to answer that, they've only won 1 of their last 8 games as well.
Exactly. They were hammered off West Ham during the Christmas period at home.
West Ham, good side though, Dan. West Ham, a good side though, mate.
Yeah, West Ham, very good team.
But as I say, they are susceptible to leaking goals, a bit like ourselves. But as I say, if Chris Wood plays and Kieran Trippier nuts one in, 95th minute, this all will be forgotten. And all will be.
The problem is right now, for me, it's this mentality that the players have. They've got this losing mentality. They're just used to losing week in, week out. And to win a game, I remember the celebrations after the Burnley game, the first one of the season. It's like we kind of celebrated it like we'd won the FA Cup. And that was fine and all, don't get me wrong. It was nice to see that. But it's so rare that we win games these days. The players just are, unfortunately, they're kind of stuck in that rut, aren't they? And I'm not trying to be overly negative here. It's just a fact. The players, unfortunately, the squad just isn't good enough.
No. I can't wait to see Chris Wood's face if he does play, just standing watching St. Maximin doing about 19 somersault turns, going, what the fuck is he doing? He just crossed the ball, and he's turning around and saying that he's probably turned around and saying like Richie or somebody going, does he do this every week? Honest, just cross the ball.
It was a bit like, do you remember with Ginola and Shearer when Shearer went into the dressing room after when the game says, what the fuck are you playing at, man?
And that is the only time Chris Wood will ever be compared to Alan Shearer on the Evermore show. I hope Chris Wood has been watching
never
that.
Again.
That clip,
never again. You've got my word. You've got my word, lads. Never again.
Exactly. Well, I'm gonna end on the Watford game, lads, and I'm with Di. I think we've got to be beating them as well. And with Dad, we've got to be positive. We've got to go at them. And we need to win. I think a draw maybe be enough. We've got Leeds coming. We'll be doing a fixture focus on that on the channel with my mate Phil, the Leeds fan, which will be good to watch. But then we've obviously got Villa as well in the mix. So no, we need to win that Watford game. That's probably the most winnable game on the page. And if we win that and we go into Leeds after that, then I think that's going to give us a bit of confidence. But moving away from our next game to our previous game.
Just one thing I'm going to say to you, mate. I think you mentioned Sarr before, but he's not playing because he's at the African Cup of Nations.
Oh, is he the African Cup? I didn't realise
that's one less player to worry about.
Thank God for that, mate. Thank God for that. Well, that's one player they let go then, and one player they didn't let go because they stopped Dennis going, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
What
Dennis
a shit house of a club they are. I hate Watford, mate. I hope they go down. Fucking anyway, so moving on from I'm going to go on a rant here. So moving on from obviously our next game to our previous game, and we're going to talk about the Salty Saints. I wrote a piece for the Slide Rule Pass blog. If you haven't check it out on the Twitter handle at SRP blog, where Ralph Hasenhüttl, the twat in the hat, was whinging about Newcastle playing a return fixture against the Saints with new players. He then tried to caveat it by saying, well, I could sign new players, and why should I sign new players? And it was, quite frankly, the most stupidest thing I've ever heard a Premier League manager say in my entire life. They should have took his cap off him and threw it in the bin. Di, I'm going to come at you first on this because you were meant to go to the game. So if anybody should be salty about this, it should be you, mate. What did you think about Ralph's comments? And am I right to call him a complete bell end? Or not, mate?
I am definitely salty that the game didn't happen. I got to be honest. I will tell you a mildly amusing tale. Is that I went to I couldn't get a train refund for my train ticket, so I tried to find a match that I could go to with my pal that was on the same train route. So I went to Bristol City Millwall, and I got we had a load of drinks with my pal in the day, and got to the game. We said, right, we should put a silly bet on just to make the game more entertaining. So we said Tom Bradshaw's going to score for Millwall because he's Welsh. We said it'll going to be a score draw. Both teams will score, and there'll be 8 or more corners in the game. So with about 5 or so minutes to go, Andy Weinman equalises for Andy Weinman. Scores and goes 3-2 up for Bristol City. So everyone around us is going absolutely crazy, and we are absolutely devastated because our 20 quid bet was going to return us 370 quid. And about 5 minutes to go, Andy Weinman's ruined the day. And right at the end, Millwall have a corner, which is the final corner we needed for our bet to come in. And we're like, bloody hell, if Millwall score here, we're going to have to leave the ground. And as the ball comes across, someone just tumbles to the ground in obviously vain hope of trying to get a penalty. And my mate stands up in the middle of the big stand and actually gets like, pen ref. I'm just like, what are you doing?
Oh, no.
So just like, okay, thanks everyone, bye. So I have
time to go. Time to leave, mate. Be careful, them Millwall fans. You've never seen Football Factory and that. The lunatics.
We were out to actually.
It's nice you turned the frown upside down, though, mate. Well played.
Anyway,
what about Ralph, mate? What's your opinion on Ralph? Am I being harsh or not?
I think you are being a bit harsh, only because he's definitely been a bell end. I don't have any argument with you there. I just think, in the grand scheme of things, it just doesn't matter. I think he's just trying to deflect away from things that are going on in his team. He's trying to make excuses about other stuff so that people like you and I are talking about him being a bell end and his silly little hat, and no one is actually talking about his football team, the realities of their kind of struggles, and the fact that they're very up and down at the moment. And I think it's pure deflection. So I think you're being a bit harsh in the sense that I think you're giving him the airtime that he wants, perhaps, rather than being harsh on him. So
I know he watches the show, Ralph. Hi, Ralph. He wears a slide rule pass cap. That's the merch. Mark's going to get the merch rolling and get him a slide rule pass cap that he can wear the next game, mate. But about you, James, what did you think about Ralph? Were you pissed off by it, mate, or were you like Di? Were you very just magnanimous about it and thought bollocks to him?
Well, actually, I'm a little bit different. Well, I'm massively different to that. This really wound me up, to be honest with you. And the whole thing, I just found it like farcical, just completely laughable. I mean, I think there's been around 20 games this season that have been postponed for COVID, something like that. And what makes this game any different? And I think it's just, unfortunately, a symptom of the situation we're in now, in that we are the richest club in the world. And everybody else is just looking for ways or means to bring us down. And I guarantee if this had happened last season, the same time, last December or whatever it would have been, when we were still owned by Ashley, nobody would have said a word. Ralph Hasenhüttl wouldn't have said a thing about it. It's just because we've got money now. And I think personally, he showed himself up a bit, and he's behaving like a bit of a spoiled brat. But it's bizarre, because if you think about it, it's exactly the same for them. And it just seems like he's cutting his nose off despite his face. And what happens, let's just say hypothetically, if they get a few really bad injuries in the next couple of weeks and they're forced to sign 3 or 4 players, then on the basis of what he's saying, well, they wouldn't be able to play either. So personally, I just don't think he's really thought it through enough. And yeah, I just think he's made himself look like a bit of a fool, to be honest.
I'd love us to sign James Ward-Prowse just to piss him off completely in the January window.
Yeah.
That would just be amazing.
Throw in Brozier as well, mate, and we'll take him as well.
Just to imagine we played him in the return fixture and it's like 1-1 and we get a free kick 30 yards from goal, and up goes James Ward-Prowse, top corner. Just be giving it all that to old Big Ralph with his cap. Someone take his cap off and throw it in the stand or something like that. Dan, what about you, mate? Are you going to be nice to Ralph, or are you joining me and James and the Ralph Hasenhüttl hate club?
No, I'll subscribe. Is there a membership fee?
Hey, get it.
Hey.
Yeah, no, it's
free cap with every entry, mate.
It's
Free
become
cap
a bit of a long line of sort of some of these managers are just complaining about petty little things. You know, Jurgen Klopp's getting involved with it. Thomas Tuchel's on the bandwagon.
Klopp's another one, and he's every week he's complaining about something else.
Ever since he got his eyes fixed.
He is a bellend. I will tell you that all day long. Of all of them, he is the one I cannot stand. He would moan about anything. You could give him a check for 10 million quid, and it'd still find him to piss and moan about.
He'd be like, "Why didn't you give me 11? I want 11."
Since he got them glasses away, mate. Honestly, do you remember? I don't know if you've seen. Was it's Superman 3? Isn't it, when there's a bad Superman and a good Superman fighting in like a scrap heap junkyard? It's almost like Jurgen Klopp needs to fight himself wearing glasses and win and become a decent bloke again. Because ever since he got his eyes fixed, he's just a monumental prick. And he whinges about everything going. Sorry, Dad. We've cut across.
Sorry, Dan, mate. Apologies, mate.
Sorry, mate.
They just always find something to complain about. They're always disgruntled. They're always miserable. And you know, if you don't like it, like, that's not our problem. Like, we don't care. You get on with it. Football works in this country and has done for God knows how many years, with the whole pyramid structure and all the times at which fixtures are played over the Christmas and New Year period, and people love it. It's just because you, with your opinions, come in and think, oh, I don't like it. That's a bad accent, sorry.
Where's he from? Dan? Is he from Barnsley? Wow. No, I don't like it.
Sounded like Darren Goff there for a minute, mate. No, Dan, man. Not you.
Oh, Dan did, sorry.
The point stands, though, like, it is just a bit pathetic, and they just need to just grow up a little bit. Like, I used to quite like Jurgen Klopp, to be fair. When he first came, I thought he was a bit of a breath of fresh air. But now, as I say, he just whinges and moans, and obviously you just need to accept that football is different in this country to the way it is in Germany and other countries in the continent, and it shouldn't be changed just because he doesn't like it. Same with
what he said about what he said about Burnley was shocking as well, about how many international players do they have, and I thought it was really disrespectful. Burnley do have international players. We've just signed one. Evening, Burnley fans. So just look at that comment there that Mark's chucked in there. So he said he'd have had no issue if it was called off due to the weather, and it cries like the window isn't open for everybody. It's a good point. I mean, Hasenhüttl makes it sound like, you know, only the rich clubs can obviously spend in the window. Yeah, and I think it was just an absolute joke, really. So I think, you know, monumentally, we all think he's a bell end, and we can agree with that. So if any Southampton fans are watching, please drop us a line in the comments below and tell us why Ralph isn't a bell end, and we'll obviously
listen to your opinions on that. We should all shut up.
But yeah, probably more than likely because they're just annoyed. They think we're going to sign Mbappe in the return fixture, which I really hope we do. That would be absolutely fantastic. So just moving away from Ralph and going back to Newcastle United. This is a Newcastle United podcast. If you like it, please like and subscribe. So yeah, it is, mate. It is. It's not just a whinging one about managers at other club. So we're going to talk about a bit of a controversial topic, I suppose. It always gauges debate within the Newcastle fan base, and that is the Longstaffs. And do they have a future at the club? Now, obviously, there's been a lot of stories about Sean Longstaff moving on and, being, I think he was potentially linked as a make way for this Luca Dean talk and everything else. But Mark has been beavering away with a stack computer again, which, we love Mark doing that. So I'm just going to pull up a slide here just to show the Longstaff's kind of story at Newcastle United so far. And just kind of looking at some of the stats they had. Obviously, Sean's played a lot more games, 84 games, 63 of those were starts. I'm amazed Matty's even managed 20 games and 14 starts. I think they're all against teams in the cup, I think, really. But a couple of interesting things stand out there. Obviously, Sean's only got 5 goals in a lot more games. Matty's got 2, as we all know, that cracker against Man U and then another good one against Man U. The pass completion rate and the tackling rate is quite an interesting one because I've often thought that Matty's not really had much of a chance in the team. If you look at his stats there, he's put in 10 tackles and 1-6. And his passing completion's 80%. I really don't think he was used very well by Steve Bruce. And I'm a big fan of both of these lads. But just to pull the slide off there, guys, and we'll open up the debate. So, James, I'm going to come to you first on this one. What's your opinion of the Longstaffs? You mentioned we got money. Do they have a future, mate, or not?
Would you want me to talk about Sean first, or just them both, or how you
just whatever, mate? Launch him, whichever one you want to launch him with, bud.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll start with Sean. Interesting one in that there has been a lot of speculation about whether or not he will leave this window. And it looks as though there's only one club in for him at the moment. And as you mentioned, Everton. Obviously, Rafa was a huge fan of him when he was manager, and I thought he got the best out of him. I don't even think he would be a regular in that Everton side, though, if he did leave. Personally, I think Alan and Doucouré are much better players than him in that role. Personally, I've got to be honest, Chris, I wouldn't lose any sleep if he left. I think he's been poor for a couple of seasons now. Too inconsistent for me, doesn't do enough in that role. And, I might be in a minority here, but I prefer Hayden. Saying that, Hayden is out for a couple of months with a knee injury, so there is that to bear in mind. But if we were to sign another midfielder this window, then I'd be more than happy to let Sean go. Matty, on the other hand, to be honest with you, I think it's time for him to move on as well. Didn't work out for him at Aberdeen on loan. I think he only played something like 5 times in the 4 or 5 months he was there. It looks like Elliot Anderson and Joe White are ahead of him in the pecking order. So I'd be very surprised if we did see Matty in a black and white shirt again. If I'm honest, I can see him being loaned out to a Championship or a League One side. And look, I wish him the best for his future, but I think now we've got our eyes on bigger and better players than him.
Well, World of Sport TV says ship them out. That's my mate Barry. Thanks for tuning in, Baz. It seems to be a point shared with a few people. Di, is it a point shared with you? Are you had enough of the Longstaff? Do you think it's time to move on? Ship them out?
I'm going to disagree with James. I'm sorry. For me, I think Sean is an example of someone who's been well and truly bruised. I think he looks utterly devoid of confidence, and I think when he was playing under a manager, Rafa, who knew the best way to get the best out of him and used him what I think is his best role, which is having someone in behind him and letting him press, chase, hassle, harry. I think he's very, very good at that. I think he's got a great engine. I think he's actually got a very good passer of the ball, maybe a better passer of the ball than he perhaps gets credit for. And I think perhaps that 80% stat is reflective of that. I think his thing is confidence. And I think if he were to get a regular run of games, then I think we could see an improvement with him. Matty Longstaff, I think I'm a huge fan of his, and I appreciate I always use a Welsh analogy, and I'm going to do the same again, to an extent anyway. Harry Wilson, who I'm sure we all know, he made his debut for Wales when he was 16. He played for Liverpool when he was very, very young, and all of a sudden the lights were shining on him, and people were expecting big things of him, and it's a big thing to ask for a young kid, especially someone like, for example, Matty Longstaff, where you're at your hometown club, you score a fantastic goal. Was it his debut? I think he scored that goal against Man United.
It was that cracker against Man United, yeah.
Exactly. Everyone is all of a sudden thinking, bloody hell, this kid's going to be it. And it's a big thing to manage all of that pressure, the glare of people staring at you. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he was dropped in and out by Bruce. He kind of, if you remember, he was put back in after months in the wilderness for, I think, in a Man City away game, just from nowhere. And again, that's obviously not good for his confidence. And to use the Harry Wilson analogy as well, he went off to a couple of different places on loan. It didn't work out for him. He ultimately just needed to grow up a little bit, get used to playing adult football, men's football on a regular basis. And as a consequence, you can now see the benefits of that. He's come back. He's still young. He's still got a great future ahead of him. And he's got used to playing men's football. And I really, really believe it would be a huge mistake to let Matty Longstaff go. I can take or leave Sean. I think he's a good player, but I agree with you. I think ultimately, if we are going to spend more money, Sean Longstaff is not going to be the future of this club, and I think that's fine. I do think there is something there for Matty. I think he's, as World of Sport TV says, he has a great engine. I think if he was in the squad playing all the time, I think he'd be really, really effective. And I think it would be a real shame to let him go. And I will stop talking in a sec. Just quickly, we were talking about young players having a chance at Newcastle. I think at a point, yes, our youth academy, is not turning out loads and loads of good players. But I do think that's also partly the policy that we seem to have, which we're not actually giving any of them a chance. And I think that's really, really important as well. I think if we're talking about having a youth academy and that's something that this money is going to do and improve, then that's completely pointless if we don't then give them a chance. And I do think Matty's someone who has come through the academy, has shown a lot of promise, and does deserve a chance as a consequence.
Does Eddie Howe rate him though, guys? Because as I mentioned before, it seems like Elliot Anderson,
really, James. Yeah.
Well, Elliot Anderson and Joe White seem to be ahead of him, don't they? For me, I think those two have been on the bench in recent games. Matty, I know, have we had him back for 2-3 weeks now?
He was injured. I think he was injured. He come back and he was injured, I think, in training. But I think it's a valid point. I mean, what Di's saying there, you have to have a player that the young guys can look up to and think, that could be me, I could make it. And if you remember back in the Keegan days, arguably our most successful, time in modern era, he got rid of the youth academy. That's the reason we didn't get the likes of Michael Carrick and, guys like that coming through. That was a real bad mistake, really, in hindsight, when you look at it, especially when you look at the guys you had in the team, Steve Watson's, Lee Clark's, that I think Ardiles brought through, didn't he? You know what I mean? So it's a real funny move to make. Dan, what's your kind of take on the boys, mate? Stick or twist? I know you love Sean Longstaff and how quick he turns, mate. You often say that.
Yes, my favourite analogy, turns like a cruise liner. Yeah. I think with Sean, I think he hasn't got much pace. I do think he blows out his arse at times when he's on the ball. I think I agree with James in the sense that I wouldn't be overly disappointed if Sean Longstaff moved on from Newcastle. I feel like since he's had that injury and since Bruce, he's not been the same player. And obviously part of that isn't, in fact, none of that is his fault, of course, but I think we have come to a time now where, is he ever going to get to that stage where he was for 2 months under Rafa again?
Yeah.
I know he is still relatively young as well, but I think when, in the grand scheme of things and moving forward with this club the way it's projected to go, is he someone who we can realistically be afforded to keep on just for sentiment's sake and sentimentality and nostalgia? And I think not. With Matty, like Di says, he is obviously even younger and potentially still has potential in him.
There's something there, isn't there? There's something there, Dan, isn't there? There's got to.
Yeah, obviously it didn't really come through Aberdeen because, of course, that loan move didn't really work out for him, but it's still given him experience. Obviously, we don't know how much he's gained from that, but still. But again, is he really going to be good enough? I mean, I'd like to see the youth academy promoted a lot more under this new regime, and I'd like to try and get as many of our young players promoted through and develop more of them as well as the years go on. But I think that just, as I say, I think if either of them were to leave, I wouldn't be, crying my eyes out. I think
no. Well, World of Sport TV agrees with you, James. He thinks Anderson's the one that should really focus the efforts on, mate. Do you want to speak a little bit more about him, mate? Because you're a fan, aren't you?
Well, firstly, checks in the post, Barry. Thanks for that comment, mate. Appreciate that, pal. I'm a big fan of his. Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't really seen an awful lot of him. I think he played. Was it the Arsenal Cup game? I believe.
He looked
was
good,
it last
didn't he?
season?
Yeah.
He looked really, really tidy. We haven't had a midfielder like that in a long time. I mean, I know kind of Joe Linton's doing that role to a point now, but whether or not that will continue, I don't know, because I'll be honest with you, I mean, I didn't think he did that well against Cambridge. But I think if you look at the two side by side, and it would have been interesting maybe if maybe for next week's show we can have a comparison of Elliot Anderson and Matty in terms of attributes, if you like. But I would say overall, between the two of them, Elliot Anderson is a far, far superior player to Matty Longstaff.
No, I think, Di, you want to add a little bit into this, mate, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I don't. I fundamentally don't disagree, James. I think he's definitely got something. I think that there's no argument of that. I do think it's difficult also though to use the loan moves as a yardstick sometimes, because I do think, you know, how old is Matty? Sorry, he's
21. 21.
You know, to go when you're 21 years of age, okay, maybe not move away from home, but not far off, to go into that a dressing room full of experienced people when you've spent your whole life at one place. You don't know what else is going on in his personal life and at home. And when you're 21, you know, you've got a big injection of money that's just come his way. He's rumoured to be on 40 grand a week. I do think it's not black and white, if you excuse the pun, to say that he's gone to Aberdeen and he's not done well. I do think at that age it's very, very difficult to do that. And there are countless examples. I mean, of people who've gone places early in their career, it's not worked out. Mo Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, where they've gone to places, admittedly to Chelsea and whatever else, but they've gone to places and it hasn't worked out. They're just too young. They're not ready yet. They're not there yet. It doesn't mean they're not good enough.
Harry Kane as well, Di. Harry Kane was one. Harry Kane had some horrendous low moves, didn't he? Back in early
Frank Lampard was another one who went on a lot of lows.
Chris Wood as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You look at the amount of clubs he had. I was just saying last night, more clubs than Jack Nicklaus.
That's the thing, and sometimes it takes time to settle at a place, and I think that could be an example of that for him. I still think
that's a good point, Di. It's a good point.
Both of them are level pegging for me, and I think, you know, we're quick to praise people who are, you know, Anderson being one of them as a local boy. Yes, you've got a young local lad coming through here, fantastic. And then we want more and we want more. Well, sometimes it's not ready. I do think we need to be a little bit patient as well with these lads. Sean is obviously a different kettle of fish, but with Matt, I think he's different.
I think Mark makes a good point there as well. Matty's got the higher ceiling, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, I agree with you, Di, as well. I think you can't write him off at 21. I mean, he showed the glimpses. I mean, you know, even beyond the Man United game, I think was it against St Etienne when he come on, he smashed in that raker. Then he scored that belter against Man U. He hit the bar from 30 yards or something. He scored again in the return fixture against Man U. And this is before he was bruised, you know, as Di rightly coined before. The problem with Matty, I think, is that he can play a deeper role and he's good on the ball and he can spray passes around and all of that. But I think when you saw just that energy that he had, that raw energy when he first came in, that was his natural game. Get on the edge of the box, go sniffing for stuff. And I think the management previously ruined that in his game. And I think he's a little bit conflicted internally. So I'd love to see what Howe could do with him. Obviously, he doesn't take up a squad place either because of his age. So I think you could keep him in and around the first team squad. And if there is a few injuries, Matty's there to step in and obviously play. You can give him a little bit, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whatever, in games. Hopefully we're in good positions. But yeah, I wouldn't give up on Matty too soon. But Sean on the other side, and I'm a big fan of Sean. I think he speaks so well as well. I think, we were all praising him for what he did for Joe Linton in that horrible interview. He's got a really good way about him, but he's at a crossroads. You're
not keen on his tash though, are you, Chris?
It's only because if I grew one, I'd look just as bad, like Keith Lemon as well. But I think he's as a player, he's almost peaked at Newcastle already. When he come through, he burst through, he looked brilliant. He had that injury. I think Barry commented there, he's lost that bit of pace in the comments. And he doesn't look the same guy that he did. And maybe he feels that Rafa can get the best out of him once again, like I said. And maybe Sean thinks that a move is going to be, his best kind of call for his career right now. And obviously, if we do buy better players in the midfield area, then potentially Sean might think it's time to go as well. But I'd like to see us keep a hold of Matty, lads, I must admit.
I agree. Can I just add one more thing on Sean? I do also
Yep.
wonder if he might think it might be a good time for him to go as well. He's
Yeah,
at
I
a
think
point,
you're right.
as you say, where we might bring in a couple of midfielders, and it's very easy for him to slip down to 5th or 6th choice midfielder, find himself out with the squad. It's very hard, to pick up a new club then if you're not being seen every week. So maybe he's reading the situation a little bit as well, and is considering making a jump before he's pushed, perhaps.
I think that's a fair shout, mate, as well. And it's a short career footballer, isn't it? To be fair, so I think you've obviously got to do the best that you can do. So moving on to the last topic of the night, guys, we're going to talk about Toon transfer talk. And I suppose there's only one place to start, really. We do look like we are signing a player, and we're all very excited because we've all got Wood. Just to pull up this slide here, so I couldn't help that one. It was too hard not to get that one in. Sorry, that's the last one. So you can see there you got. I know, I'm terrible. You got Chris Wood there. Obviously, his career stats. Just picking out some of the bones and that. Again, Mark's done an amazing job of the slide. So big up the stat man. He's an absolute ledge. But looking at that there, you can see he's got 154 goals in 460 games. As James rightly said, he's had more clubs than Jack Nicholas because Mark's just put 7 loans on there. He didn't want to list them all. He wouldn't fit them all on the slide. But I think the big thing to look at is obviously his heading ability. 217 aerial duels, and he's won 113 of those. And obviously he's in the kind of higher percentile of strikers for aerials won. So he's obviously going to be very good in the air. He's 30 years old. It's talking about, I think 20 million was the first figure. Then it went to 25. I know timber's gone up in price, but Jesus, he went up 5 million in like 2 minutes. But people are saying it's too expensive. For me personally, it's the going rate for a 10-goal a season Premier League striker. James, coming to you first. Are you happy, mate? You've got Wood?
How much would have you got, James?
Sorry, guys, I couldn't have it.
No, I love it. Keep them coming, please. Keep them coming. Right, look, serious for a second. I'm a little bit underwhelmed by this one, lads. I'm really sorry. I think he's only scored 3 league goals this season, and he has started every single game for Burnley. Don't get me wrong, Burnley don't usually score that many goals, but if you compare that to Wilson, who has 6 goals this season, and that's with Wilson being injured for 5 or 6, I think. I just don't think he's an upgrade on him. And for me, I wanted to sign someone who was an upgrade on Wilson. I don't think this signing would have been made if it hadn't been for the injury to Wilson. I think if Wilson right now was fit for Watford, we wouldn't have even looked at Wood. I just think he's been a bit of a panic buy, in my opinion. I don't think he was first choice either. I think probably 3rd or 4th choice, if I'm honest. But look, I suppose we are where we are right now. Desperate times. Calls for desperate measures and all that. And yeah, he wouldn't have been my first choice personally. But look, I am going to get behind the lad. I really hope he can prove me wrong and get a hat-trick on Saturday.
Dan, do you think he's good, Wood, or do you think he's a plank like James? Oh, these are good. These are too good to pull out these ones.
There you go. No, you know what, right? As much as you could say underwhelming, I'm actually quite pleased with this. Personally, it's a striker, and currently we don't have a fit.
It's a striker.
Yes, we don't have a fit one at the moment. B, his Premier League record is remarkably similar to Callum Wilson's. I pointed out a few times last night. I know he's only got 3 this season, but I think Burnley's main focal point this season has been to give it to Cornet instead, and maybe perhaps Wood's just been using the link up instead as the target, but. And as well, as I mentioned, he's a target man. This is something we don't have at the moment at all. Wilson's not really a target man. Dwight Gale was never a target man. And when we've got such a good cross with the ball in Kieran Trippier and others who can play a good ball as well, Jacob Murphy, member of the fan club, Matt Ritchie, for example, can all put good balls into the box. When you've got that, you want someone to be in that mixer and to get their bonds on it and to stick it in the back of the net. Like quite old-fashioned way of playing, but if it gets you goals, you'd be happy.
Just an interesting point in this, Dan. Just an interesting point in this, mate. Mark put this in the slide rule past chat, didn't he? That I think if you look at a Wood and Wilson comparison, you've got 144 games, 265 shots for Wood, 121 shots on target, 49 goals. Callum Wilson, 134 games, 240 shots, 93 shots on target, 48 goals. So that backs up what you're saying, mate. Very comparable stats-wise.
It's very, very similar records, and I think there was another stat I came up saying that it wasn't completely recent, but it had come from midway through 2021 to say that, you know, he was one of only a few players to have scored 10 or more goals in the last 4 Premier League seasons. And that was in a bracket alongside Mohamed Salah, Heung-min Son, etc., etc. And so this is a steamed company. And he also
definitely Jordy who's pulled that stat at me. That's definitely a Newcastle fan who's pulled that one out.
Oh, well, still, as I say, even so, he's
did they count goals in training as well, Dan, for that?
Joselu was 240 goals in training.
Hey, I remember that when Joselu first signed, and there was the open training session back at St James's Park, and he scored an absolute worldie, and we all thought, "Oh, hey, this man, he's the real deal."
Joselu is massively underrated, mate. But Di, what's your take on him? I know he's no Kiefer Moore Ballon d'Or, but do you think he's a decent player, mate?
I was with James. Underwhelmed, I think, is the word I'd use. But I think at the minute it's horses for courses. I think at the moment we haven't got a reliable centre forward, and I do think that one thing he does have, which Callum Wilson doesn't, is durability. I think he will play and play and play and play. And I think that that's a really big thing for us when we know Callum Wilson's injury record. I think he has scored 1 in 3 in the Premier League, which I think is much better than I initially thought. And I love that. I love that stat that Dan mentioned as well. They're in the same bracket as Salah and Son and Kane and Vardy and all these others. So I enjoyed that one massively, mate. I think ultimately, and I might be being a bit, I don't know, naive here, but I ultimately don't think the sum of money matters. I think we're in a situation now where we can make that work. 24. I think we've got to get rid of that Mike Ashley mindset to an extent, that whether it's good value for money or not, I don't think that matters. I think if he keeps us up, it's a bargain. If he doesn't, then I think we'll sell him to someone else. And if no one else wants to buy him, I do think he's a great option for us in the Championship next season if that happens. So, it's not exciting. It's not the glamour signing I think some of us thought might happen. But in terms of what we need for our situation, I do think we could do a lot worse. And, as you said at the start, it's the going rate for a 10-goal-a-year striker in the Premier League. So I hope the boy keeps us up. Like you said, James, I'm 100% supporting him once he pulls on that black and white shirt, and we've just got to hope he does the business. I noticed today that we played Burnley at Turf Moor on the last day of the season. Nothing would make me happier than him scoring a 90th minute goal.
Script has been written.
Sean Dyche will be right pissed off with that. He'll be right pissed off with that one.
That was much better than your Darren Gough Barnsley one before.
That was my Sean Dyche might go on the CV.
Love that. I love that.
Just to wrap up, I'm going to throw a couple of the names out in the transfer market. Obviously, Botman sounds like he's out the window. Obviously, Lille don't want to sell him. I think the other defender was Diego Carlos. Mm-hmm. I keep wanting to say Costa because he's a lunatic, but it's not him. It's Diego Carlos. Apparently, we're going to go back to Sevilla with a £28 million bid. And the other name that is brought up, but I'm completely underwhelmed by this. It's a very meh signing for me. He looks like a member of Hanson. It's Todd Cantwell. I'm not very impressed with him as a player either. So, guys, just a couple of names there. Coming to you first, James. Diego Carlos, good. Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, any defender right now really is an improvement, even if it's someone from a lower division, Italian, Dutch. I genuinely think anything's an improvement of what we got now. But this guy is a Champions League player. He's played in every competition. He's at the top of his game. He looks like an absolute shithouse. A bulky bloke. He's physical. And we need that. We need that right now in the team. We need a player who's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck and kick the other ones at the arse and just say, "Well, lads, get a grip."
If he says,
start winning games.
I love him.
Well, exactly. Look. He'll be speaking Geordie before you know it, I guarantee you. I think you're right, Chris. This Botman looks a little bit difficult now, doesn't it? And as I say on last week's show, he was our number one target. And Lille are just playing hardball, aren't they? Whether or not we go back in and give them, was it 50, 60 million or one?
Perhaps
I don't know.
I'd say go if we're still in the Premier League, we go looking for him again.
I think a lot of these players will come running in the summer if we stay in the Premier League. I think there is an element of, I don't know if I fancy that. What if they go down and everything else? What about Todd Cantwell? Have I been too harsh because he plays the bass in Hanson, or is he a decent player?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I wouldn't have him. I don't think he's in that part of the pitch. I don't think he's an improvement on anything we've already got. I think we'd be spending money for money's sake. I just don't see the value. with the defensive situation, I do personally think I'm sure that he's a great player, but I do really think we need some sort of Premier League experience. I do think it would be a bit of a gamble to bring in someone like that at this stage. And you're right, he looks like a massive bloke. He definitely looks like a shithouse. I just think we need some Premier League experience in there. And again, always the Welsh angle. I think Joe Rodden would be a fantastic signing for us. I really, really do. He's strong, he's quick, he's very good in the air. He reads the game so well. I think if we're gonna go and spend money on someone, he'd be one to do. I also think he might be willing, or Spurs might be willing to do a loan as well, which I think would probably suit both sides. I think the big thing that you mentioned there is I think players are wary at this stage, big paycheck or otherwise, that they might move. In the case of the lad from Sevilla, that you could move from the Champions League to the Championship. It doesn't matter how big the pay packet is there. I think that's a big step down. So I do think we're going to have to go a bit more lower market, if you like, because I do think people will look at us as too much of a risk at this point, however big the pay packet is.
Aaron Ramsey still one to sniff around, do you think, Di?
I mean, the big thing is Aaron Ramsey got COVID. So I think that is going to kibosh things in the short term. I don't have any insider gossip. I'm sorry to say. I've spoken to a couple of people.
Frank, I'm disappointed, Di.
I know. I'm apologising. I'm tweeting him every day. He's not texting me back, unfortunately, which is very.
Can you not sign via Teams? Just get like electrical digital signature and just sign the dotted line.
My mum is parked outside his front door in Philly, so hopefully she'll give us some information soon. But the one thing I have been told is that is he's already back in Wales. His wife wants to stay in Cardiff and resettle herself there. So the reality is he wants to go somewhere where he can get back and forth to Cardiff quite easily. And I think
Allegri said he's definitely leaving as well, I think.
Yeah. The one thing I do think with Ramsey, I don't obviously know enough about the situation in depth, but I can actually see, because of COVID and everything else, and he is on massive wages because he was a free transfer. They offered him €500,000 a week. So I do think he will have to take a colossal pay cut. COVID has now come in. I know Allegri said 99% he's going to stay. He's going to go, sorry. I actually wouldn't be surprised in the way it all falls out if it is that 1%. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sees out the rest of the season there just because of the circumstance. And then I think we'll kind of reassess things in the summer. Is my 10 pence worth?
Di, just a quick question I was going to ask you on Joe Rodon. I'm a big fan of his as well. I think he's a hell of a talent. But why do you think he can't get in Spurs' team right now?
I think that's a great question. I think the one thing that concerns me slightly is he's played under 3 managers now and no one's given him a chance. And I don't know whether that's a fitness thing or whether it's an attitude thing, whether it's an experience thing in the Premier League. Sorry, the dog is desperate to chirp in there. I do.
Good insight. It's good insight.
It is. It's better than mine. I do think it's a fair question, and I don't have the answer for you. All I can say is, having seen him play for Wales and seen him play for Swansea on many occasions, he is spot on for us. And I think he is someone, we're looking at trying to build something. I think he is someone we can go to and say, you be our Vincent Kompany type person. You be the person who shores us up at the back. He's a young boy. He's 24. You can go on this whole journey with us. You can be a hero here. You can be 10 years here. You can be a captain. You can be a leader. You can do whatever you want to be here. And I think all of that is definitely achievable and possible. I don't have an answer to your question. I just think he's a fantastic player, and I would love us to sign him.
It's good comment there by Stu about what type of midfield do we need the most, defensive type or goal scorer. Dan, just throwing you in there, mate. What would you rather go for? Somebody to shore it up in the midfield or somebody who can get us goals?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I suppose you've got, I think we've already got quite a defensive sort of midfield line anyway. Sort of like Hayden is. Shelby perhaps is deeper these days because he hasn't got a lot of pace, but so perhaps, especially with Willock really not firing on all cylinders at all this season, that goal scoring midfielder we don't really have. Obviously, it was Willock until he decided that he was terrible at football. But I mean, if in an ideal world, you'd want both, wouldn't you? But I think personally, if we can get centre halves in, then I'd rather go for a goal scoring one.
Yeah, that's a fair shout. What about those players mentioned in the transfer talk, mate? Just to wrap up the show,
with Todd Cantwell, with Todd Cantwell, I think I'm in agreement with all of you. I was speaking to my mate about this, and he called him a Poundland Jack Grealish.
It's not a bad comparison.
Nice. God. What does a cheap Jack Grealish look like? My God. Yeah. Jack Grealish looks like he operates the waltzes at the Hoppins, doesn't he? Anyway, he looks like a fucking wrong it anyway, didn't he?
Him and Jeff Hendrick.
But I mean, with Carlos, I mean, yeah, you'd take him because I think he's an improvement regardless of whether he's perhaps not, he doesn't know the Premier League off by heart yet. I think we're just at the stage where as long as we can bring in a couple of centre halves, a striker, perhaps even another one, and then maybe one more midfielder, then I'd be happy because I think we've beaten one team this season. Anything is an improvement at this stage.
True.
We didn't even mention Ekitike.
No,
just to get your pronunciation in, James.
Just because you wanted to get Ekitike in there, yeah. So a young French striker. Go on, James. Wrap us up with a show, mate. Tell us about this young French striker then.
Well, he's very young. I think he's only 19, isn't he? So this one's certainly one for the future. This is definitely not a short-term signing like a Chris Wood. It is a bit of a gamble. Personally, I would be looking at bringing in someone like him in the summer. I think Dan mentioned before about Botman. I would put him on that similar basis, that one for the summer, because I think he's going to cost you about 25, 30 million. And right now, we probably have other priorities.
No, you're right. For every Mbappe, there's a David Bellion waiting to shit team up, isn't there, to be fair? So that's a good way to wrap the show up, guys. And thank you so much for joining us this week. If you guys like what you've seen, please remember to click like and subscribe before you leave. We'll be back next week to talk about more Newcastle United in the Evermore podcast. And for now, guys, it's time to say cheerio. And let's hope Watford at the weekend is 3 points in the bag. See you later, lads.
And how are the lads?
How are?
See you, lads.
He's got it back.
Take care.
See you, lads. Cheers.
See ya.